Good morning. Good morning. Please make your way to a lovely seat. We're going to begin in about 4 minutes. Okay, that's where. So, is it? Do I have to click on it, or do I just click again? We begin when Chris and Yadviga sit down. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let's begin, please. Good morning, welcome. Happy to have you here. My name is Kwesi Brookins. I'm a professor here in ecological community psychology at Michigan State and the vice provost for University Outreach and Engagement. I currently serve as the immediate past president of the Society for Community Research and Action, ending that third year of the term. Talk about that later, maybe. And some call me somehow the organizer of this 20th anniversary biennial. Before we begin with anything else, please give yourselves a hand for being here. The first SCRA biennial took place in 1987 at the University of South Carolina, and the second one was right here at Michigan State University in 1989. I was a graduate student at the time, and I was fortunate enough to have attended both of those. And so I am thrilled that you are joining here. I'm thrilled to be able to host it again at Michigan State University. I want to thank you all again for being here, as well as those who are watching the live stream. And we're looking forward to providing everyone with an exceptional learning opportunity, but also and I hope you take this seriously, given the times that we are in, a space to rest, to reconnect, to return, and to be renewed, so that we can all go back and do that community psychology work that we all do. Before I continue with my next set of remarks, I want to acknowledge Heather Mitchell, who's in the house. Please, Heather, stand. And I say that because if you look at Heather, she's like the most centered and relaxed person in the room right now, facilitating our wellness sessions that I was fortunate enough to attend this morning. So I'm the second most centered and relaxed person in the room today. But I want to encourage all of you, and I have a little bit more to say about this later, to get up tomorrow morning and come on out and flock with us. So that we can continue to build community in all the ways that we want to build community. So again, thank you, Heather. Heather has to take off for right now, but we'll be back tomorrow morning. As of yesterday, we had 413 attendees registered, 53 virtual, 19 international, 164 from the U.S. in the professional range, and 177 students. Give it up for yourselves. Our international attendees are from Japan, Chile, Canada, Zimbabwe, Italy, Portugal, Egypt, Australia, UK, and Nigeria, and I probably missed some places that we didn't quite capture. So we want to particularly thank you all for braving the crossing of the border. And out of all of this, we have over, both virtually as well as in person, we have over 547 sessions. So we are excited, and we got a lot of learning to do. Wrong direction. So this is what we're going to do today. We have a couple of welcomes we want to do, honor the land, nation, and people, and as well as we welcome you to Michigan State University. As you know, we have a panel discussion led by Dr. Robin Lynn Miller, and then I'll have a few closing remarks and some housekeeping to give you a kind of sense of how to maneuver and navigate the spaces that we're in. I want to next introduce Jessica Saucedo, who is a descendant of the Yaqui and Cora peoples of current-day northern Mexico. PhD candidate in community psychology at Michigan State University and a native children's research exchange scholar through the Tribal Early Childhood Research Center. She is a dedicated community-engaged researcher focused on supporting child development through culturally grounded relationships and interactions. And she will provide the honoring of our land, nations, and people.
Hey everyone, good morning. Glad you can all be here today, and I'm glad that I'm here with you all. So, founded in 1855, Michigan State University served as a prototype for land grant institutions established under the Federal Morrill Act of 1862. A critical part of MSU's history is that the university stands on the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, the Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. Specifically, MSU occupies land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. The greater Lansing area is known as Nequadon, meaning the place where the rivers meet. This area was a vital site for hunting, travel, and gathering. As an institution, and as members of a larger community, we must remain mindful of the historical cost of MSU's legacy, especially those endured by Native American and Indigenous communities with whom we remain inextricably linked. Land-grant universities across the United States were established through the genocidal dispossession of Indigenous lands. Therefore, MSU has a responsibility to support and remain accountable to the tribal communities whose land made its existence possible. While MSU takes pride in its mission and contributions across Michigan, the Great Lakes, and Turtle Island, we must also continue to reflect on our role in the ongoing impacts of colonization and the disenfranchisement of the original and current occupants of this land. This acknowledgement is a living commitment to the work that remains, and it is our responsibility to follow it with meaningful action that supports the Indigenous communities whose land we live, work, and play. I understand that we have varied lived experiences, so there may be individuals who have various questions or struggles about how to reconcile with the actions of our ancestors and the institutions we connected to. However, throughout the conference, I invite you to reflect on this question. How will you take action to support Indigenous communities today and in the future, here, where you live, where you work, where you play? So think about it, and thank you, and I hope everyone enjoys the conference.
Thank you, Jessica. I'd now like to introduce our Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Thomas Yaichko. Dr. Yaichko is a professor of economics who serves as the interim provost and executive vice president for academic affairs at Michigan State University. He transitioned into this role from serving as the senior associate provost, overseeing the budgeting process of the Office of the Provost, Provost Office, Communications and Events, institutional research and institutional space planning and management, as well as the Apple Developer Academy, the only one in the United States with MSU in Detroit, and the Student Information System Transition Project. Previous to that, he was MSU's Associate Provost for Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies and Dean of the Graduate School, after serving for several years as the director of the American Economic Association Summer Program, a 2-month intensive pre-doctoral residential program that prepares talented undergraduate students from underrepresented backgrounds for graduate work in economics and related fields. Thank you, Dr. Yaichko, for being here, and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Brookings, Kwesi. Good morning to everyone. I'm happy for those who are here today in person and have managed to come here despite restrictions or hardships around travel and funding. And I'm also very happy to welcome those who are joining us in the live stream, especially given that this is maybe one of the benefits we've had coming out of COVID, was that when travel and there are hardships around travel and funding, that we still can welcome people into our community. So I'm grateful for that and welcome you here. As was mentioned, my name is Thomas Yachko, and I serve as the interim provost and executive vice president for academic affairs here at Michigan State University. And on behalf of my fellow Spartans, it is my honor to welcome you to Michigan State University today. MSU's rich history dates back, as we just heard, to 1855, as it was established as a university for and by the people, with the intention of creating and disseminating knowledge to empower an ever-evolving society. Since its founding, MSU's missions and values have remained unchanged, as it has commitment to its commitment to advancing knowledge. The first Spartans aspired to face challenges head-on and were determined to make a positive difference on the campus and also beyond. Today, more than 165 years later, Spartans hold true to these aspirations, working alongside local and global communities to transform lives to make a positive impact. As a community of scholars and practitioners, you share similar aspirations. Your commitments to advance justice, equity, and well-being are not only admirable, but they are necessary to address challenges across our communities. The collective knowledge in this room, and I'll include those online, as well as with our friends across the campus and across the world, is diverse and vast. And I hope that this conference serves as a reminder that the real change can happen when research and actions intersect. I echo Dr. Brookins' hope that this conference fosters synergies and opportunities for meaningful dialogue and collaboration. And we look forward to learning about the many positive outcomes that will undoubtedly result from this year's conference. So, best wishes for a rewarding and productive time together. And with that, I'm happy to turn it back to Dr. Brookins. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yachko. I want to say a few words about my presidential stream buddies. Dr. Tonya Hall, who is our 2024-25 SCRA president, is attending the Biennial virtually. Hey there, online. And has recorded a welcome message of her own to thank everyone for attending and to provide an update on her year as the organization's president. This recording will soon be posted on Whova, on the conference app, as well as available on the SCRA website. But please join me in thanking Dr. Hall for her service over the past couple of years. Also want to thank Dr. Mushood Uluranraju, the current president-elect. You will hear more from Mushood at the plenary luncheon tomorrow, but where are you at? My brother, where you at? Stand up, raise your hand. There you go. Appreciate you. I'm not clicking the slides like I'm supposed to, but here we go. So now we get into the meat, if you will, or the whole lot of vegetables of this presentation. I'd like to introduce Dr. Robin Lynn Miller, MSU Professor of Ecological Community Psychology, who will moderate this opening plenary session. Dr. Miller is a professor of psychology at Michigan State, where she directs the doctoral training program in ecological community psychology and is associate director of the master's degree and certificate in program evaluation. Her evaluation career reflects a 36-year commitment to the health and well-being of LGBTQ plus populations and others at high risk of HIV infection. She began her career as the lead evaluation specialist for the gay men's health crisis in the earliest years of the HIV epidemic. She has evaluated diverse communities, designed and led programs in the United States, Africa, and Caribbean for adolescents, Black, gay, and bisexual men, and other at-risk populations, including ex-offenders, bisexual girls, male sex workers, primarily focusing on structural and human rights interventions to promote access to HIV prevention and care and reduce structural stigma. She has performed policy-related work on conversion therapy, serving as the lead evaluation scientist on the American Psychological Association's Task Force on Therapeutic Approaches to Sexual Orientation Distress. The latter report is heavily cited in past and pending legislation banning conversion therapy practices on minors in multiple U.S. states. Dr. Miller has been a multiple leadership roles, Dr. Miller has been a member of the American Evaluation Association since 1992 and played multiple leadership roles in the association and is winner of 2 of its career awards. She is the 2022 recipient of the Exemplary Project W.K. Kellogg Foundation Community Engagement Scholarship Award from the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities and the Engagement Scholarship Consortium. Join me in welcoming Dr. Miller.
Thank you for that very generous introduction. So when most of us submitted our proposals for this year's conference, we imagined a very different reality than the one we are living in at the present. We thought it fitting to open this year's conference with an opportunity to reflect upon the many ways in which changes in the U.S. federal landscape over the prior 20 weeks have impacted on our members, our profession, and our global community of allies and partners. We view this as an opportunity to kickstart a discussion on how we identify ideal ways to move forward so that our field, its members, and the communities that we engage continue to thrive, a conversation we anticipate that we will have over the course of the remainder of our time together in East Lansing and beyond. We've invited several community psychologists to have a discussion together, reflecting on the past 20 weeks and helping us to begin to think about the way forward. So I would like to ask to join me on stage, if you will, Gary William Harper, Judah Viola, Corbin Stanley, Mary Beth Shin, and standing in at the very last minute for Emmanuel, who had travel difficulties, Sarah Buckingham. I'm going to have them each introduce themselves to you in turn. So I'd like each of you to tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do and your pathway to community psychology. So let me start with you, Gary.
All right. Good morning, everyone. That wasn't very good. Good morning, everyone. All right, thank you, and also happy Pride Month. My name is Gary Harper. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a professor in the School of Public Health at the University of Michigan, a little university down the street. My work is primarily focused on working with LGBTQ plus communities in designing, developing, and evaluating community-based, community-centered interventions focused on sexual health, HIV, and mental health. So we were talking a little bit about my journey to community psychology, and I saw Lenny Jason earlier, and Susan, so I applied for a job at DePaul University in 1995. I had no idea what community psychology was, to be honest. And I remember Lenny Jason, I had to interview with him. And so I stayed up the whole night the night before, reading as much as I could about community psychology, and then sweated through the entire time I had to talk to Lenny over the phone. But thank you, Lenny, for doing that. So I'm excited about being on the panel, and we'll talk more.
Thanks for warming him up, Gary. One thing Gary didn't mention, the role he played in my life was a really supportive faculty member when I was a grad student at DePaul. So thank you for that, Gary. My name's Judah Viola. I'm faculty at National Louis University in the Community Psychology PhD program there, and do a variety of things, also involved in program evaluation, and always looking for new opportunities, new projects, new areas of interest. I came to community psychology trying to be a bridge, looking at all the theory and research that I had read in social psychology, but not seeing so much of it applied in the real world. I took some time working as an investigator in New York City, looking into complaints against the police for misconduct, and recognized it wasn't an issue of a few bad apples, but systemic problems that we were facing that were negatively impacting our communities in a variety of ways, and wanted to find who had ideas not just for theoretically changing those systems, but for being that bridge to make those changes. So been at National Louis for a while, and trying to work with many students to see if we can get some of those changes made.
So hi, I'm Beth Shin. I'm probably the geriatric member of the panel. I've currently a professor emerita and research professor at Vanderbilt University. Haven't quite given up research yet. And I work on how to prevent and end homelessness, and focused on interventions and how they work or how they fail to work to make inroads into this scourge. My journey into community psychology, I think most people my age invented community psychology before we found out that it existed. And so I went to that university down in Ann Arbor, that, don't hold it against me, in social psychology, back when social psychology still had an intervention focus before it kind of retreated into the lab and into cognition. And discovered that there was community psychology there, and so I did both of those programs. I was 30 years at NYU before I moved down to Vanderbilt. I'm sorry, is that not on? Okay, so anyway.
I am Corbin Stanley. I'm a graduate of Michigan State's Ecological Community Psychology program, and I am the Senior Director of Impact Communication and Continuous Improvement at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So I'm in the practice nonprofit space. And so AFSP, we're a national nonprofit devoted to suicide prevention across the country. I came into community psychology actually as an undergrad. I was majoring in psychology, aiming for a career in clinical psych. And then I started volunteering for our community research extension of our Center for Community Engaged Learning at Weber State University in Utah, where I did my undergrad, and was going door to door doing needs assessment surveys for the Promised Neighborhood grant that our local United Way had been awarded. And then after that, I got a job as a research assistant in that community research extension, and really found my passion in community engaged research and evaluation, working with communities. And then when I started grad school here at Michigan State, was able to merge that with my interests in suicide prevention. And so really found my home in community psychology there, and happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Sarah Buckingham. I'm so sorry that you're having to hear from me instead of Emmanuel this morning. But I think I still might be the youngest person on the panel. A little older than Emmanuel, but so I'm faculty in a clinical community psychology program at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. Very thankful to live on Denina lands up there. And I also co-direct the Center for Community Engagement and Learning, which is our community engaged teaching and research institute on campus. I think of two kind of pivotal events that drew me to community psychology. I went to undergraduate at the University of Northern Colorado, which is on the plains in Northern Colorado, a big meatpacking plant area. And I was an undergrad in the early 2000s, which is when ICE first became an entity. Actually the first big immigration raids, workplace raids, took place when I was an undergrad, and kids literally came home on school buses to no parents. And I was studying psychology at the time, but it's what really pushed me to study sociology and understand how systems play a role in people's health and well-being. But after that time, I worked as an addictions counselor for a while, and I worked primarily with folks from Central America and Mexico, and the state of Colorado at the time collaborated with ICE, unbeknownst to me, this 22-year-old who was trying to do good in the world. And I had a client give me a call because he was completing his court-mandated treatment for addictions work, and was entering a program called Work Release. If folks aren't familiar, it's where the government allows you to go out during the day so you can make enough money to pay them to lock you up at night. The state of Colorado at the time, they no longer do, but at the time they collaborated with the federal government so that when people finished their sentence, they would be entered into immigration proceedings for deportation. And this client called me from a burner cell to let me know that he was okay, he was going on the run. And I think at this moment, like in a couple of ways, like on the one hand, like so thankful that he took the time to let me know that he was okay. And he called me on a burner cell because I was still part of the state, right? And so that's really what pushed me into community psych. It's what led me down that path. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Since we're sharing microphones, we can steal the one up there. So I want to start with you, Gary. So you may want to grab one of those. So over the past several months, the work that you and I and all of our colleagues have done throughout our careers has been dramatically impacted by changes in U.S. federal policy. So I wonder if you might share the story of your last 20 weeks in terms of its impact on your research and training program.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think in 20 weeks I've aged 20 years. So on March 21st, a day that shall live in infamy, I lost all of my federal funding in one day through email. I've been a faculty member for 30 years. I came in with federal funding. I've had it my entire career, and in one day, millions of dollars disappeared in one day. One thing that Robin alluded to is that I co-direct a mentoring program called SOAR, Student Opportunities for AIDS and HIV Research. It's a program to get undergrads into graduate programs with a focus on underrepresented groups and sexual and gender minority folks. We have a 100% success rate over 4 years. That was just eliminated in one day. Well, the funding was eliminated in one day. I'm stubborn as hell. My co-director is stubborn. We have kept the program running since then, but the stress of keeping it running and trying to get money it started actually before we found out, because we knew we were going to be on the chopping block, because our title had all the bad words, underrepresented minority, sexual and gender minority, and HIV. So, we knew it was coming, but we have had to hustle to get money from every place that we could across the university. We even started, a GoFundMe account. All kinds of things to try and keep the program running. I'm proud to say that we just got the university to kick in the last part that we needed in order to finish the program at the end of the next academic year. I also lost all my federal funding in Kenya. I do a lot of work in Kenya around HIV and gay and bisexual men, and also lesbian, bi, and queer women. That was really devastating. The day that the notices came out was the day that our grant was going to council to get funded. We had gotten a great score. It's a program for gay and bi men living with HIV in Kenya. One thing that happened too that's impacted us is the cut in USAID and PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. I was in Kenya in March after this, and don't believe anything you hear in the press. There are no HIV meds going to certain groups of people. If you are gay or trans in sub-Saharan Africa, you are not getting medication. If you are from different minoritized groups as well, you're not getting any medication. I was there in March, and it was, I brought 3,000 condoms, 2,000 packs of lube, because there's no condoms being distributed at all. I actually, well, I didn't do anything illegal, but we got them in creative ways. I actually became an ordained minister, and it helps to be Reverend Dr. Gary Harper. People just let me bring anything in the country. So, you know, if y'all want to smuggle anything into Kenya, just let me know, if it's legal. But I think the impact for myself as a gay man who's been an activist since the 80s. I've been working in HIV since 1985. That's where I met Robin in the old days. It was very personal because my community, I'm a survivor because everyone that I came up with is dead. All the gay men that I came up with are dead. And so to be a survivor of the epidemic and then see in one day the erasure of our lives, the erasure of basically our existence, and for my trans brothers, sisters, and siblings, it's been even worse. Talk about erasure. So many people have lost their jobs, their livelihood, and again, even their existence. I'm also part of a big network called the Adolescent Trials Network, which Robin was part of as well. That's the only adolescent-focused HIV network in NIH. It was shut down as well. They just reinstituted it, but of course they eliminated my committee, which was on equity, inclusion, and engagement, and they eliminated the one study that was focused on trans youth. So yeah, so that's the impact. We're not giving up. Again, like I said, I'm stubborn. I mean, we'll talk more, I'm sure, but it's been, in my entire career, it's been the most stressful time. Because every single day I have to think about how can I support my students, how can I support my communities, how can I support myself? I mean, I'm still waiting to wake up and have gay marriage eliminated. You know, my husband and I have been together 31 years, we're legally married, that could go away tomorrow. So that stress of not knowing what's gonna happen each day really wears on you quite a bit.
Thank you. Beth, I know you also wanted to say something about the loss of federal research funds, and others may as well.
So my university, and I probably a lot, we rescinded our offers of graduate student admissions this year because people were running scared about funding. Loss of funding has been much more scattershot than yours. And it's sort of hard to know who's going to lose money for what reasons, but that's an issue. But I'd also like to say it goes back more than 20 weeks when you look at the courts. So yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the Grants Pass decision, which said it's perfectly fine for communities to criminalize sleeping out of doors, even if there is no alternative in that community. And so the effects on our courts go back a lot more than just this Trump administration. And we will see to what extent the courts hold or cave in the various court decisions that are coming down.
Thanks. So you mentioned students, so I want to turn to Judah. So Judah, you and I had a brief email exchange, and I'm going to come back to you, Beth. A brief email exchange in March in which you observed that your students were, as you put it, on a roller coaster ride. So would you describe for this audience the NLU student body, because it is quite different than the student body here, and how these recent shifts have impacted on your students.
So it depends how much time we have. But thanks for the opportunity. So National Louis University primarily serves returning adult students. And while we're serving them, they're serving our communities. They're serving our communities by taking care of their families, by taking care of our families. They are teachers, they're nurses, they are educators, they're public health workers. They work for the government and the nonprofit sector primarily. We have international students who are here providing vital services in areas of particular need in our communities around areas of substance use, recovery, and homelessness and immigrant rights. And so our students were affected in multiple ways. Directly, in terms of we had students at the university who have had their visas revoked. We have others who are living in fear of whether that will happen to them. We have students who are undocumented, not particularly in the doctoral program, but throughout the university. We're a minority serving institution. We're an HSI, Hispanic serving institution. Our institution has social justice in its DNA, in its core, and its mission, and plastered all over our website. So there's fear of being targeted for that reason. We have students who have been let go from their jobs at the VA, who have had the grants that pay for the work that they do, helping to find housing for the most vulnerable populations in the city and in the country. So they're getting it from both sides. We have had a small number of grants either frozen or rescinded, but because we're a teaching institution, that's not the primary way in which they're hit. The primary way is being fearful that their family members may be deported, that they be forced to leave, or that they already have or will lose their jobs. So every day it's something else we're trying to figure out how to support the students who are with us and find ways to allow new students to come into the institution.
Beth, I didn't know if you wanted to add something since Vandy's population is so very different, students.
We do have a lot of international students, and folks are running scared. I think we have been a little less a target than some more visible institutions, in part because we have a pretty conservative chancellor who has not taken stands that we wish he would. And we have junior faculty who are running scared in terms of their immigration status. So I don't have a lot of stories about people who've already suffered, but certainly people are pretty nervous.
I want to turn to you, Corbin. So one of your priorities in your role is ensuring that policy is evidence-informed. And you are all over when it comes to FaceTime with politicians and other policymakers. So I wonder if you would reflect on the last 20 weeks and what your experience has been like being in that intersection of practice and policy and bringing evidence into the policy-making process. What has that experience been like over this most recent time period for you? And you might want to give some context on your work.
Yeah, so it's certainly been challenging over the last 20 weeks. So as I mentioned, my organization, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, we're a national nonprofit, but we also have 73 chapters in all 50 states, as well as DC and Puerto Rico. And we're headquartered in New York, but we also have a public policy and advocacy office in Washington, DC that focuses both on state policy as well as federal policy around mental health and suicide prevention. And so that work has been going on since our founding in the 1980s around policy for suicide prevention. And it's been interesting there have been some very notable shifts over the last 20 weeks, but there's also been sort of a gradual shift over the last 5 years or so. Really, probably over the last 10 years or so. When our Public Policy and Advocacy Office first started, and for most of its existence, it was largely supporting suicide prevention and mental health legislation at both the state and the federal level, advocating for certain policies. And over the last 10 years, there's been an increased need for us to oppose legislation, which hadn't really been the case for most of our time. Opposing bans on gender-affirming care, opposing bans on participation in sports for transgender youth, opposing cuts to funding, those sorts of things. For most of the issue of suicide prevention, it has been relatively nonpartisan. Most people agree that suicide should be prevented. It's when we get into the sort of where and how where we can come into some sort of partisan politics. And we're also, as a nonprofit, we have a relatively unique position in that we are also required to be nonpartisan as a nonprofit organization. We can advocate for policies, we can't advocate for candidates or parties. But as a data-informed and science-based organization founded by researchers, we are the largest private funder of suicide research, maybe soon the largest funder, period. But we have a robust investment in research, and so all of our programs, our policies, as you mentioned, are evidence-based. And so one of the things that we've been, and I've trained researchers and evaluators on how to communicate data to policymakers, and it's become even more increasingly true that research and evidence is one source of many sources of information policymakers are using to make decisions. And so one of the things that we've found to be, I don't know about effective, but at least in the moment, in the rooms, to be powerful is pairing those data and research with constituents' stories around suicide prevention. And so actually Sunday I'm flying to DC to meet with members of Congress, and we're bringing in over 200 volunteers from across the country to join in those meetings as well to advocate for mental health and suicide prevention legislation. But it has been incredibly challenging. We actually just found out last night that SAMHSA is cutting the LGBTQ plus specific services for the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. We had anticipated that was coming. It was proposed in the proposed budget and the HHS budget, and now that will be cut effective in July. And so the statement from SAMHSA says that everybody can still call 988 and get resources, but there was a specific line. You could call 988 and press 3 and be connected to LGBTQ plus specific resources for those 25 and under. And we know that there are specific risk factors and protective factors. There are specific conversations that need to happen, and there are specific experiences that it's helpful to share with crisis counselors who are members of that community, who may have lived experience themselves, who are trained to de-escalate crisis situations for members of that community. So that's one example that we're seeing. We are also seeing the CDC's comprehensive suicide prevention program being significantly cut in terms of funding. We are seeing whole teams being eliminated. The NSDUH, which is the National Survey around Substance Use and Mental Health, that almost that entire team was eliminated. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey team has been largely trimmed back. So another big impact has been data infrastructure around the country. What we know about suicide, suicide risk, suicide rates, suicide ideation, suicide attempts, all of that data comes from these publicly available data sets and surveys, and a lot of those teams are being cut and eliminated. And as it was already taking up to 2 years to have a full data set for, we just finalized the 2023 data as far as national suicide rates. And so it's been challenging. And so I think in meeting with policymakers, our goal has been to pair the data with the stories, as well as to show the effectiveness of these programs. One of the things that we're at least somewhat hopeful about is that the Garrett Lee Smith Memorial Grant from the CDC is being level funded, at least currently. So it's not being cut. We're not getting the increases we were hoping for, but it's continuing. And there's a lot of evaluation and research behind that program. So that's at least somewhat promising, and maybe there's some hope that if we can get even more research and evidence behind these programs, but then the challenge is we need funding to make that happen. And so as a nonprofit, we're in a unique spot in that we have to be nonpartisan, but we also don't receive federal funding, so we can do a little bit more in terms of advocating and developing programs. And one of the things we're also trying to do is where NIMH, for example, is cutting some grants on LGBTQ plus specific suicide research, is there something we can do to fill in those gaps? If not fund that research based on our own budget constraints, can we at least get those researchers together, create a learning community? Can we fund some programs that maybe only had 1 year left on the grant and just get them to the finish line? So it's been definitely a lot of conversations happening in that space.
I don't know if others want to chime in on the policy space. I know, Gary, you spend time in it.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I've worked with Robin on like conversion therapy legislation, and I actually sit on the board of psychology under our governor here, Gretchen Whitmer. And so being in that space has been very interesting too, to see the ways in which, like you said, the sources of evidence that are used to, kind of push bills forward and to have open discussion about them are going away. And again, especially for LGBT Youth Risk Behavior Survey in some places, added sexual orientation, aspects of gender identity. And so without that national data, it's going to be really hard to push some of the initiatives that we need to push because, especially when we talk about LGBT youth, suicide rates are, unbelievably high for that population. So I'm more worried about the next 2 years after these are cut because we still have some of that data that we can use. But I'm really worried about down the road what's going to happen.
So I want to turn to Sarah. So my observation of the 9 different professional associations of which I'm a member is that everyone has responded to the present moment quite differently. Some are hiding and have not responded at all except to do something to protect themselves. Some have been issuing statements and on the Hill and actively engaged in speaking out, protecting their members, and everything in between. You're our representative to APA and in a unique position to think both about how we as a professional association have and ought to respond to the present moment, but how our parent association and other associations are responding. So would you reflect a little bit on what you observe associations doing in this professional moment on behalf of their members?
Sure, I'm happy to. And I might bring some of Emmanuel's words into this space to kick us off. Emmanuel is a phenomenal poet, for folks that don't know, and wrote these words when the APA Council on Accreditation decided to rescind its enforcement of diversity, equity, inclusion in admissions and retention. When wolves come a-circling, the bison didn't run away. They formed a ring and stood their ground. If they run, the wolves bloodthirst and attack. So predators pace, showing menacing smiles, darting in close, seeking to startle. And the bison stand. After a while, the wolves wander away. Among humans, there are no wolves, no bison. That is not our way. When we run, we escape our humanity, and they escape theirs. To stand is better and wait for the blow, as if to say, I will not escape you, and you will not escape me. So I have seen organizations act in very different ways, and like was mentioned, I do represent us on APA Council, and one of the things that we have struggled with as SCRA is our relationship to APA over the years. I've struggled with it, and our organization has really struggled with it, and I've always been kind of in the mix of saying, APA has a lot of power, and is listened to in ways that we're not necessarily listened to as SCRA, and I think it's incredibly important that we have a seat at the table and push this parent organization, right? It is a parent organization. It dictates a lot of what we can and cannot do, which is a big issue that we have as a division of the APA. But they hold a lot of power on Capitol Hill, a lot of power in DC, a lot of power in a lot of ways. And there are some really important things that happen when we have a seat at the table and are able to push the APA in ways that work with SCRA, that work with our values. SCRA as an organization is a complicated one. We're volunteer-led primarily, right? Like many of these orgs. And with that, we bring lots of different voices, different ideas, and very limited resources to the table. And so when we come together to try to act, I think one of the biggest struggles that we have as a group is figuring out how do we leverage those limited resources to make a big difference. And so I see what happens in SCRA similarly to what happens at APA, is there's lots of tension, right, in what we do and how we come together. And I think it's so incredibly important that we recenter on what the values of community psychology are, and we act together as an organization to stand up for community psychology, to stand with our values, to take action as a group, and to be visible in that work. Because what oftentimes, and what I've heard from the students and heard from many people in our organization, is that it doesn't look like we're acting, right, as an organization. And I think that's because oftentimes we're a bit disconnected from each other and from the work, and we do a lot of kind of fighting within because it's really hard to push up. And we need to call each other in and push out. And so I see us in some ways, I don't think we're hunkering down quite the same way that I've seen APA hunker down. But I do think our organization in some ways has kind of hunkered down and supported each other within. And I'm so glad that this is a place for kind of respite and rest, in addition to inspiring each other and getting out there to do the work. But I think there's lots of different ways that we could act that I don't necessarily know that we're acting in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could add something to that. So I'm a member of the American Public Health Association. I'm part of a lawsuit with the ACLU and APHA. We just got a victory, but I'm not jumping up and down. Well, yeah, let's clap for it. Yeah, if you read the judge's decision, it was amazing. So that brought me, short moments of joy until I'm like, okay, now what? What Bob's going to drop. But the thing I wanted to bring up is that APHA has protected us in the legal sphere. And that's one thing that APA has not done. If anything, they've gone the opposite way. Like you said, APA has a lot of power on the Hill, and they should be protecting us the way that APHA has. I mean, I have been just blown away at how they've taken care of us throughout this whole lawsuit. I get contacted almost on a feels like daily basis to get updates about our lawsuit, what we need to be doing, all these things. And to me, that's what APA should be doing because a lot of us are being impacted. And, when I heard the decision about the DEI, I'm just like, I almost rescinded my membership because I don't want to support that when I have another, parallel organization that is launching a lawsuit on my behalf and my community's behalf.
Yeah, Beth, one of the reasons I wanted you to be here is you have been a past president of SCRA, past president of SPICY, and also had other kinds of leadership roles. So I just wanted to hear you reflect as somebody who's, very seasoned and sitting in the president's seat on the diversity of this ecosystem of associations and the lack of response. And then I have a follow-up for you, Judah, as a fellow AEA member who I hope is as mad as I am.
one of the reasons I think it's hard for SCRA to come together, in addition to the kind of diversity of viewpoints within, is the diversity of areas where we work. And for an organization that is focused in a particular substantive area, it's easier to take stands that where you have some standing in that area to do something in that area. So, you know, the homeless organizations have filed lawsuits and amicus briefs and so forth around issues around homelessness. That's not really an SCRA thing, it's my thing, and so I work with the National Alliance to End Homelessness there. But SCRA members work in so many different substantive areas, and what we bring is more an approach to the work. And so, you know, a lot of us are academics, and so the attacks on the academy are one thing that SCRA could talk about. A lot of us work in communities, and the attacks on minoritized and immigrant and sexual minority and so forth are all things as citizens and as members of SCRA we can talk about, but SCRA doesn't have the kind of substantive grounding that the American Public Health Association does, and I think that's one of the reasons that it makes it difficult.
So I want to reflect a little. I don't know, how many here are members of AEA? Would you just raise your hand? Okay, not very many. So the American Evaluation Association is the largest professional association of evaluators in the world. And one of the first things the Trump administration did was fire 17 inspector generals. Those are evaluators. Crickets, right? So I would love to hear, Judah, you reflect on this idea that there is a role for associations in defense of their members, and that is part of the professional mission of association.
So I think that absolutely is the role of the organization. Somewhat similar to SCRA, the American Evaluation Association has a variety of substantive areas. And then even the divisions, they call them topical interest groups within AEA, they all have a variety of substantive areas because evaluators are methodologists that evaluate programs on a variety of areas. So within some of the subgroups, the topical interest groups that I'm involved with, for instance, the independent consulting topical interest group has provided quite a bit of support for people who recently have lost jobs, who are looking for new jobs, who are looking to collaborate on work, or just creating spaces to reflect and connect and have some peer support to understand what one another's going through. So at the individual subgroup level, I've seen a lot of positive things with that group, some also with the nonprofit and government topical interest groups. But as an association at the larger level, the parent organization, similar to APA, there is a lot of kind of, from my perspective, it looks like they're putting their guard up, their head down, and just sort of waiting to see what will happen, and then responding and being disappointed, and communicating that, but not so much aggressively pushing back or thinking of ways to advocate more broadly. I think a couple other divisions within APA that I've seen, like Division 48, Peace Psychology, has come out very strongly and made some important statements and let be known their opposition to the warmongering that's happening. And then there are some other organizations like the National Prevention Science Coalition that has consistently been attempting to be nonpartisan, yet kind of calling out all of the policies that are not being data informed and ways in which they could use data to better be economical at the same time as being humanitarian. And then there are other even more kind of activist type organizations like Psychologists for Social Responsibility that I think on the one hand is outspokenly promoting the values that many of us within SCRAW share, but also has been struggling to gain attention and have that voice. And so because they're not part of they don't have a parent organization like an APA, they're doing that work from the outside. And so I think we have to think about, as Sarah said, how to focus less on our own imperfections and focus more on ways that we can support each other, come together and advocate and use that collective power and think about our unique position as community psychologists who study community organizing, who study coalition building, to be doing community organizing and coalition building within our organizations and rely a bit more on our practitioners and have some of our academics and theoreticians help us learn, help us document what's going on, but really be led by the practitioners who have that rich experience and try to come together and support each other and not let perfection get in the way.
We're going to open up the floor in just a minute, but I have one question I'd like each of you to respond to before we do that. So as you think about the ways in which the ground beneath our feet continues to shift and the major challenges and opportunities ahead, I want you to focus on the opportunities and what you think is how we best move forward as a field in defense of our values, in defense of our members, in defense of our communities. So I'm going to start with you, Sarah.
Big question. I like it. A few things come to mind. I think the first is remembering our values and being centered in our values and what community psychology is, and being centered in how we do the work, because those are the two big things that we bring to the table. And then making space for diverse action, because I think all of us bring, and like was mentioned, we have so many different topical areas and interests and things that are kind of wound up here, and we all have very different ways in which we do the work too, right? Some of us do a lot of kind of organizing. Some of us do a lot of work from the inside. Some of us are practitioners. Some of us are academics. Some of us are students, right? We come to this work from different spaces, and I think we have to make a lot of space for all of us to do the actions that fit for us within this organization, while staying centered on the things that bring us together, which are our values and how we do it. And making space for community, I think, is also really important. I know I'm in a state that's quite far from the rest of you if you're US based, and a number of folks here are working in kind of segmented spaces too. But thanks to technology, we have the ability to be able to cross borders and to be able to engage in different spaces. And so I think doing that coalition building and coming together as community to act is what we do. And I would encourage anyone who thinks SCRAW should be doing something, right, to come forward with it. And to propose it and to lead it and to do that work together, so that we are acting in community. I think there's a lot of space within this organization for people to step in and step up and do that work together, but we actually have to step into it to be able to do that work together.
Yeah, I think in the practice and nonprofit space, one thing that comes to mind is continuing to double down on our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. At AFSP, we've been very fortunate to have excellent leadership who have released public statements opposing certain legislation, restating our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in suicide prevention work, because that is suicide prevention work. And we can't prevent suicide without preventing all suicide. And so I think connecting to our organization's mission, doubling down on that, And sort of related to that is around sort of the data and evidence around these pieces. Another aspect of my job is sort of the stewardship of our organization's strategic plan. So I think for organizations like SCRA, like APA, for nonprofits, community-based organizations, making sure that DEI is embedded in the strategic plan and that there are specific metrics to hold an organization accountable to those outcomes and those goals. We are just launching into our new 3-year strategic plan, and we have specific outcomes and measures around diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility across all of our departments. And my team is responsible for measuring those outcomes and reporting them to our executive team and our national board. So holding the administration accountable, but also holding ourselves accountable to those values, and that there are metrics tied to those values, and that there are actions tied to those values. And then the other point I'll just reemphasize is that the importance of community. As I mentioned, we're a national organization, but we have 73 chapters across the country, and I often say we're volunteer-led and staff-supported. We have tens of thousands of volunteers across the country who are delivering programs in their communities, who are engaging with people in their communities, who are providing a healing conversation to somebody who's lost a loved one to suicide, who are supporting those who have survived suicide attempts in a wide range of communities. So continuing to support our communities and taking the lead from our communities. And so holding our CEO often holds listening sessions with our volunteers and with our chapter staff to really understand what's happening on the ground in these different states. And from a policy perspective, it's also supporting suicide prevention legislation at the federal level, but really understanding that a lot of what's happening at the federal level is also taking place at the state level, and has been taking place at the state level for a number of years. So making sure our volunteers are empowered to share their stories, to share the data, to share the research, and that they have the tools to go and meet with their elected officials and advocate for change. And so just that commitment to our mission, our values, and making sure that we're measuring progress on those goals.
So sort of riffing on the two comments that have just been made, I think there are internal things we do to support each other, and there are external things that we do to project what little power we have in the world. And internally, we've talked about community and about supporting one another as we're facing some of the challenges here. And I think that's important because it can feel isolating when you're in an intellectual or policy minority in your locale. In terms of what we share that we might be able to project, I think it is that emphasis on diversity and inclusion, and that's economic, and it's sexual identity, and it's race, and it's gender, and I think that suffuses everything we do, and it is research-based. You know, it's a values orientation, but it is also research, and getting the research out there that says, you know, we're not the equitable society that maybe John Roberts thinks we are, and all we need to do is stop discriminating in order to stop discriminating. Well, you know, we have evidence, present tense, from research that suggests that across all of these dimensions, we are not an equitable society, and we really need to push back on this let's eliminate DEI. And that's a potentially courageous stance, but one that I think we could all get behind as an organization, whatever the individual substantive areas are that we're working on.
So I think we have a lot of work to do, but we shouldn't be cynical, and particularly recognizing some of our limitations. But I was listening recently to Erica Chenoweth, political scientist, who talks about the 3.5% rule. You may want to look into it. But it's basically this point that over the last 120 years, no authoritarian regimes have been able to continue that move towards authoritarianism if 3.5% of the population stands up and pushes back in a consistent way. And that's a bit of a smaller number than we might imagine in our heads in terms of what it takes to create that change. I think we need to continue to be stubborn and not self-censor ourselves, not to comply ahead of time, to know that because this administration is shrinking the government, it's shrinking the oversight, it means that there's no way for them to have oversight over us unless people are kind of turning on each other, pointing each other out, or not supporting one another. So if we support each other, if we stand up together, then the numbers are on our side and the power is actually on our side. And we can be the bridge builders. As community psychologists, I said, I came into the field because I wanted to be a bridge builder. Well, like many of you, I get a lot of emails about causes and different issues around the environment, around immigration, around human rights, around LGBTQ issues, around education, healthcare, housing, all of it, right? All these separate email requests saying, stand up for us. Stand up for us individually. This terrible thing is happening. We need to do something about it. Well, as bridge builders, how do we bring those groups together and say, how do we all stand together for one another and for each other? And I think that's a role that we all need to think about. How do we do that? So we can, we can continue to have the issue that we're most passionate about and the community that we're most connected to, but we have to consider that interconnectivity and that humanitarian mindset that's going to be required for us to meet the challenge of the day.
So it's always fun going last because I could just say, yeah, I co-sign with everything everyone said. A couple things I want to just emphasize. One is the stubbornness. Again, as someone who comes out of activism in the 80s, I am blown away at the number of people that are just rolling over, the number of universities that are just preemptively getting rid of everything. We are being governed and ruled by fear, not by reality, not by data, not by community, but by fear. And we have to, it goes back to what you're saying, we have to recognize, identify our principles, our values, and stick to them. I have been pushing back on my university a lot. I've been interviewed by lots of reporters. I've been in several articles, and I made a decision that I'm not going to back down. Now, I can do that because I'm an old white dude, and I have the privilege of being a full professor and a steady job. But so a lot more of us who have that privilege need to be at the forefront because we can take the blows. I can take it because I have that stability, I have that power, and I have that privilege. And I would put a challenge to everyone here that if you are a person in that position, you need to be stepping up. We are SCRA, action. We need to be taking action. Statements are nice, all those other things. I support that, but at the end of the day, we need to get our asses out of the office. We need to be in the community. We need to be raising money. We need to be helping people get jobs. And I really want to emphasize, too, the global space, because so much is happening globally. As a government in the 60s, we created USAID under supposed humanitarian efforts. It was an effort to strategically have partners to help the United States government. In one day, we removed all of that. When I was in Kenya in March, people were literally starving to death with storehouses of food, but no one could get to it. And people were not getting their HIV meds. They weren't getting, any kind of prophylaxis, things like that. So I think we need to look beyond what's happening here. Yeah, things are bad here, but I'm going to be okay, right? And so a lot of us are going to be okay no matter what. We have a pretty, privileged life in some ways. But we need to make sure that we're not going through this with our blinders on. And think about what is happening to everyday people outside of the United States. We have our tentacles all over the damn place. And yes, things are rough here, but they're much rougher in other places. There's a quote, and I forgot who said this. Of course, knew I was going to forget this, but talking about Elon Musk and the that Doge thing, that it's an example of the richest man in the world killing, underline, killing the poorest people in the world. And that is reality. I'm not being dramatic. I've been there. I've seen it. A lot of my colleagues, Robin does global work as well. So I would just really encourage us to stand up for what we believe in, take action, and if you're not working in an area that's directly affected, support other folks. The reality is, in terms of the grants that were canceled, it wasn't across the full spectrum. I'm part of a group of terminated folks. At University of Michigan, I was part of the first 20 terminated grants. All the PIs were women, people of color, and sexual and gender minorities, all of them. This is a targeted attack. This is not a general attack. And so if you are an ally, we need your help. We definitely need your help during this time. So think about how you can support folks, how you can support students, how you can support faculty who are going through a lot. So I'd really emphasize the A. Circle the A, action, get off your butts. These conferences are nice and it's to connect. But after we walk out these doors, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to make a difference in the lives of the people who are most impacted by these cuts? That's not us. It's the people in the communities who are suffering.
Like as Emmanuel would say if he were here, face the shit. We have 2 minutes for folks who'd like to add or comment. There are mics in the audience. If you need us to bring one to you, we can do so. I can't believe we've stunned this group into silence. That can't possibly be true. Or either that, people really want the housekeeping info about where the bathrooms are, since they're hard to find from here. Yeah, please come up.
Thank you again for a great panel. Kwesi had talked about earlier, I think we're outnumbered 2 to 1 with students here, or just about, right? We also have global members, and so I want to just sort of continue what you were just saying and ask, what's the call to action, or what's the invitation for our global members, and specifically for our young people, our students?
I don't know. Did you want somebody from SCRA to answer that as an official SCRA thing, or just sort of general reflection?
However you interpret it.
Okay. I'm going to look to you.
Yeah, I'm talking a lot. Sorry, but I have a big mouth. I think for, again, those of us that have been around a little bit longer, those of us that have more privilege, we need to be checking in with our students all the time. I'm a mentor for a bunch of students this summer. We had a big pizza party yesterday. For a lot of folks, there's so much uncertainty about what's going to happen. And also for students who belong to different minoritized groups, they're feeling very invisibilized. And so I think it's on us to make sure people are seen and heard, and that their lives matter, their careers matter, and helping them see that this is a really horrible time right now, but it's a blip in time. This too shall pass. I believe that. Right now, it doesn't feel like it. So I think from the student perspective, I think we need to be doing a lot of caretaking.
Yeah, one thing I'll add is I've done some community engaged work with youth and have taught students a bit as well. I think another sort of maybe inverse of the question is we can be taking the lead from students as well. I find a lot of the time they are very active in the community. They have a lot of ideas about what needs to be changed and how to change it, and they are often leading in these spaces. So I think It's also incumbent on us to take the lead from students and listen to their experiences and act on what they have to say as well. So just kind of, flipping the perspective a little bit.
And the way I took the question was the call to action for what students should do, or what we think students might be able to contribute. And I think taking the lead and letting faculty, letting nonprofit leaders, letting legislators, letting everyone in the community that you as students are interacting with, what avenues, what channels you think are going to be most effective to connect with other younger people, other people who are students in a variety of fields. Again, going back to that bridge building piece. So, whether it is using social media, whether it is thinking about, what is it we can do to get other students engaged and involved in a way that is just much broader, right? We need broader participation and engagement if we're going to be able to be effective to push back. So think with us, right? Let's not be segmented and try not to think of like we've got students, we've got faculty, we've got that. All of us together need to come and share ideas about here's a way we can bring 2 or 3 organizations together to become 4, to become 10, to become 100 organizations that are speaking with one voice on a particular issue to move forward.
And just briefly to add to that, connect in the next couple of days in this space. I think the call to action is to be vocal and to really connect with people and to name what you're noticing, what you're feeling, where you want to go from here. My senator has gotten so much shit for naming aloud that she's afraid. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't act, but she's afraid. And I think we need to talk more in those terms and to be really open and honest with each other. And so I would just encourage you to be open and honest and really connect with each other, with all of us in this space over these next few days, because we can act together then.
Unless we have others who would like to put in the last word, I want to thank my colleagues for getting us started, to provide the backdrop for what I hope will be an exciting time together in East Lansing, thinking about how we move forward in this moment.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. As my colleagues shuffle off the stage, which is fine, just don't run over me. I want to also thank them for getting us started. I am energized despite the sometime depressing topics, but that's why we're here. We're here to engage these things in serious and critical ways. So again, thank our colleagues for what they offered this morning. And then I'll also say what you need to do next is breathe and hydrate. Y'all got water on the table, so hydrate. Keep that energy up. And I had some comments I was going to do afterwards, but I'm going to save them to tomorrow when we do the plenary lunch related to kind of SCRA, and what we can do. But I will say one of the principles I operate from is, and I think we all do, relationships are primary, right? Everything flows from relationships. Everything else is reciprocal. And if you do nothing else during the conference, build more and more relationships. And my comments will be tomorrow about how community psychology is both our blessing and our curse. And think about that, and I'll try to explain later. I'm going to do some real quick housekeeping in the last few minutes that we have. First, we may experience some strong thunderstorms this afternoon. Should a weather emergency arise and a warning is issued to shelter in place, to please act calmly and make your way to the lower level. We lovingly call the garden level here in the Kellogg Center. And there will be staff from the Kellogg Center as well as our office, University Outreach and Engagement, to help guide the way. If you saw earlier and on the app, there is a Safe MSU app. You can download that and get direct notices about anything that may happen. We will be optimistic and assume that that will not be the case. The app is where you can find everything. There will be changes periodically, so please use that. And at the registration desk, if at any point you have questions, please feel free to go there. There's a program at a glance in the packet that you received that has a map to allow you to easily figure out where you need to go in the building, but also on the app you can find out where those rooms are. As far as the rooms are concerned, Centennial rooms, A, B, and C, which is right across the hall, are a select number of the virtual sessions. So although you are in person, you can also get on Hoover and access any of the virtual sessions. And we tried to make it easy for you. You don't have to get on your laptop and that kind of thing. Just go in the room like it's a regular session, and it'll be streamed there, and you can participate that way. And you can check the app to see what sessions those are. Refreshments will be available throughout the entire conference. There are two primary places: Galaxy Room right around the corner on this side of the building, and then down the hall, the Lincoln Room is also right outside the Lincoln Room, and that's also the exhibit room. That's also where the posters will be. That's also where the fair will be for interest groups. So throughout the day, coffee, tea, drink, refreshments, and other kinds of snackables for the most part will be there. We have a dedicated reflection and break room, which is all the way down the hall, right before you get to the doors that go to the parking deck. On the right, room 101. It's a really chilled place. It's even got a fire going in there, so you'll be able to take a break at any point in time. The closing reception, the opening reception will be right here this evening. So come on out. We'll have some music. We'll have some small food as well, drink, opportunity to connect with folk if you have registered for that closing reception. And then the opening reception, and then the closing reception is on the other side of town at a place called Urban Beat. That'll be Friday evening. We will have shuttles that leave from Kellogg on a loop to go there and come back between 7 p.m. The reception starts at 8, but the first shuttle will leave at 7 p.m. and will return from Urban Beat at 11:30 p.m. So roughly 30 to 40 minutes loop that will be happening for the shuttles, but you're also welcome to get there on your own. Let's see. One announcement I want to make, I think, is what's up next. We'll see. No, that's not it. The wrong way. So, something to celebrate here. Our elections have closed, and I want to join me in congratulating the folks that you see on the screen, who are our new part of our executive committee and the officers. So Sherry Bielecki, where are you at, Sherry? Please raise your hand. The hardest job in the organization is secretary, but thank you and welcome. Jonathan Scasia, I don't know if I pronounced that right, our member at large for APA. Is Jonathan in the room? Virtual, all right, virtual. Gabriel El Medianat Nero Aruz, I hope I pronounced that right, our regional network coordinator. Give it up for Gabriel. And Michael Pandu Patria, student representative. Give it up. Many of you know we still have a vacancy. We did not have nominations for the president-elect position. We still accept those nominations and will hopefully be running an election internally for that. So please see me if you want to nominate yourself, if you want to nominate somebody else, if you want to know what the hell the job is all about and what the requirements are, happy to have that conversation. We have a program at APA in August 7th to 9th. The information, I think, is also in Hoover. If you got a quick minute, although I'm not going to give you a minute to scan that QR code. I'll show it later if you need it. But you'll see that elsewhere, and I think we'll have a pretty good lineup for SCRA representation there. I want to thank all of our sponsors who are listed here. Let me make sure I get my notes here. Wiley Publishing, that publishes our flagship journal, American Journal of Community Psychology, Taylor and Francis, which is a journal of prevention and intervention in the community, Pacific Oaks College's School of Cultural and Family Psychology, as well as the tote bags you have from our MSU Extension office here. We want to thank them. I also want to give my thanks to Capital Area Interpreting and Consulting Services for providing sign language interpretation, and to Cheney Media for live streaming services. Feel like a flight attendant. There you go. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to extend a special heartfelt thank you to dedicated staff here in our Office of University Outreach and Engagement, as well as the SCRA, the SCRA Biennial Conference Planning Committees, for their diligence and attentiveness in providing attendees, which you will be provided, with an enjoyable, meaningful, collaborative conference, as well as the many folks who stepped in to volunteer. Loretta standing in the back, who is our volunteer coordinator. People are typically identified somewhere on here, and you can't, nobody can get away because, it's like having a dog thing around your necks right now. We'll find you if we need you. But please, thank you all and we'll have more thanks in the future. As far as eating, right? Lunch buffet, lunch today and Friday. There's the closest places to do lunch are both here in the hotel, right? So if you walk down the hall, you'll see the sign for the buffet. You have to pay for it, and you have to eat it in the restaurant right across the hall, but that's the closest. You have more choices. There are about 9 stations across Harrison Road in the dining hall, where they have about 9 stations, and you can go in there also and pay and have a lot more choices, right? Those are the closest, but also in your app you see the walkable places not too far from here for those of you who want to kind of get away from the site. So please do so or take advantage of that. And then also want to bring to note that we are in the throes of our strategic planning and coming to the end of that. All of the things we talked about is what is the future of SCRA. As part of that process, there'll be 1 or 2 sessions. I think there's a town hall that is happening during the conference. Please, 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 we need all hands on deck. We need all voices in the room and to help us continue to shape what the future of our organization is. I mentioned the wellness sessions that we'll have 1 more tomorrow morning, and I am going to strongly encourage all of you. So you probably have seen the notice that I put out, and I think if I click here, you'll hear from.
Blessings. My name is Heather Mitchell, and I'm a somatic movement artist. I welcome you to join me for some grounding and centering movement, as well as to co-create a community step that emulates the unity of birds flocking. In times such as these, where tensions are high, it is important for us to come back to our bodies, to honor the wisdom within, and to use this wisdom to build strength in our relationships and in our communities. Please join me in solidarity.
Thank you, Heather. And come flock on up tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. and join us to get you centered and started off on the day. These are long days. You might as well start them off right. So we look forward to seeing you there. We also have in your packet that you got when you checked in is a 1-sheeter but double-sided, that describes what we hope you all engage in as far as story circles. So we have one more scheduled, which is also tomorrow at 7 a.m., which is kind of a facilitated. But I want to encourage you all to just engage in your own story circles. And it's a simple idea that you get to know each other, ideally people you don't know, right? We don't have enough of an opportunity to get together in person. And when we have that opportunity, we want you to really engage each other, right? To get to know, right? I was out last night with Judah, and he's the consummate, teacher, mentor, whatever, right? What brought you to community psychology? That's the simplest question you can ask anybody, and the story will come. We have some prompts in there for some other stories, right? The more we get to understand why we are here, the better off we all will be, and the better we will be able to focus our organization in the directions that we want to do. So it could be over a meal, it could be having coffee, it could be just going down to that reflection room and sitting down with somebody and engaging in that story. And again, the degree to, and even the people you think you know, you may not know what those stories may come out. So we appreciate that. So thank you and welcome. The next session starts probably about right now. And yep, it's already started. But please enjoy, and we'll see you soon.